Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Insights and Innovation series. Today we have our amazing partners at ACM, and it's a bit of a special one because we have the amazing Lisa Levesque here, and she's the National Strategy Director from ACM, talking about their most recent study with Heartbeat of Australia in combination with the University of Canberra. Now, I've had the pleasure of seeing this last week, and I did say that, and I kid you not, it was some of the best regional research I have seen in my life. Like, it was really, really good. And there's not much out there around this stuff, so quality stuff. And it's got the weight of the Canberra University behind it as well. So without further ado, I will pass over to the amazing Lisa, Ellen DeGeneres, as she was describing herself earlier on, to take over and introduce the research. Lisa, over to you.
Thank you. I only described myself because I thought I was Ellen at the events last week after a couple of champagnes before I got up on stage. I probably won't be doing that again. I'm only on water today. Hi, everybody. So yeah, as Lord Sam just highlighted, we undertook a major study with the University of Canberra to understand the Heartbeat Australia. The research went out in March and was completed by May, and we had over 6,300 respondents. All the data has been weighted accordingly to population. And I guess for us at ACM, the aim of the research was to really get a deep understanding of regional audiences and how, if at all, they do differ to those living in metro. Also, importantly, it was about how Aussies are connecting to their local community and, of course, the role that local news plays in their lives. Just so you know, there is a lot of data. We had a whole presentation, which was all the research, and then I did an insights piece. This was last week at 2 events in Sydney and Melbourne, but today I've kind of tried to bring them both together, but know that so much information sits behind this, and if you're interested, please reach out after this and we can certainly look at cutting it by different age groups and whatnot. So there's a lot that sits there, but today you'll just be seeing the highlights from the study. We'll cover 6 key areas, the first being future sentiment and how Australians are feeling about the future. We shall look at life satisfaction. We'll then do a deep dive into how the regions are evolving, how those in the regions connect with their community, the role local news plays in regional communities and why they consume is more important than how. And we'll also explore those in the regions want brands to show up in their community. So we'll talk a little bit about advertising towards the end. But firstly, we'll look at how Australians are feeling about the future and what plans they have. So despite all the increasing pressures, and thinking that this was done in March through to May, so there has been a lot of change that's happened in the last 3 months, but despite the increasing pressures, overwhelmingly Aussies are feeling really positive about the future. Sentiments, the key sentiments are feeling happy, hopeful, optimistic and content. We then looked at that data and we broke it down by metro versus regions, and hopefully you can see here, sorry, graphs are always a bit tricky to present, there's not too many of them, but those in the regions are significantly happier and more content than those in metro audiences who are feeling far more stressed, anxious and more pessimistic about the future. We also looked at ACM readers and we found that our readers are far happier than even those in the region. So we've got some really happy readers, which you can imagine our leadership team were very happy about. I think the sad thing for me is that when we delved into the data and looked at age groups, our youngest generations of 18 to 24 are really struggling. I got a real deep sense of kind of what's going on in the minds, and it led me down a rabbit hole of further research. But these guys are really feeling it. They are the leading factors and around how they're feeling about the future is one of stress, anxiety. Interestingly, they're feeling the most lonely of any other generation, which is normally something that we would associate with older generations. But I guess when you think about, and if any of you love a young adult or know a young adult, we know that these guys have probably missed out on the most when you think about going to university for the first time, maybe a gap year and getting a backpack and heading overseas. All of these firsts where you start to build new communities and connections and relationships have been taken away from them. Sadly, over half of them are concerned about their mental health, and many of them cite social media as the main contributing factor to their mental health stresses. One thing that we did learn is that our future plans appear to correlate with how happy and satisfied we are with our lives. So, for example, happier people in the regions, feeling more content, more optimistic, are planning to do more things and more so looking to enhance their lives. They're more likely to be travelling, renovating their existing homes, learning something new, and buying home furnishings and appliances. So it's almost enhancing what they've already got. Whilst we found those in metropolitan cities are looking at big life changes, and they're more likely to be seeking a new job or moving house or traveling overseas. So it's kind of like getting away, moving away, looking for something more, whereas those in the regions feel far more satisfied and are just making their lives better. We also found that those in the regions are planning on doing more in the next 12 months. They'll be more socially active, looking after their health and fitness more. They'll be showing support to local businesses and charities more than those in the capital cities. We then asked Australians how satisfied they are across, we looked at 8 different areas of their personal lives. And here, hopefully you can see that, we found that those living in the regions are significantly more satisfied across all areas of their personal lives. The biggest variance was for satisfaction with their overall quality of life, how safe they're feeling, their standard of living, and also that having a sense of community or feeling part of a community. When we look at that by, there's a lot of variance that sits behind age, as we all know, but we just grouped the under 45s and 45 plus, which I wouldn't like to say 45 plus is old, because I certainly fit in that bracket. But we also found that it's the younger, the under 45s that are feeling not as satisfied across all elements of their personal lives. In particular, finance is a big one, and also feeling part of their community, which once again, when we look at the last 2 years, there's been a lot of opportunities taken from us to connect with communities, unless, of course, if you're in Melbourne, it was within your 5 kilometres. Those in the cities of more concern across the board when it comes to personal issues, such as mental health, physical health. But as I said, it's more about financial woes for those living in the cities. And I guess that's naturally due to the higher cost of living and housing affordability in metro markets. Another thing we found, which we absolutely loved, and I think it's something we kind of felt was always true, but we didn't know. So this study has absolutely helped confirm that people consume local news to stay informed and to feel connected to their community. And in doing so, this actually leads to a higher life satisfaction. So the blue numbers there is showing how satisfied people are with their lives that are consuming local news and information. So when you think about the correlation, it's knowing what's happening in my community to the people and the place that I love and that I'm in. Absolutely has a direct correlation to how satisfied you are with your life and that sense of community that you feel. And interestingly, here you can see, and to be honest, most media channels, when we look at the main source of local news, they're quite even, but I think the key standout here is that those that don't consume any local news are less satisfied with their lives. So it just yet again shows the correlation between consuming local information and a connection to community. So I'm now going to take you through some of the key themes and insights and essentially explore how the regions are evolving. And I think one of the key things here is that I've been around for a long time, and regional was always, skimming a little bit of the budget to afford a little bit of TV, a little bit of print, maybe some radio. But we need to change the narrative that's happening. I worked in the UK for many years, and regional versus metro wasn't a thing. They were just regions, and they were each they all had people living there, so they were all incredibly important. So I think our industry has a bit of catching up to do, because we still seem to kind of get fixated on this metro versus regional when it comes to media planning and buying. The perception of regional amongst everyday Australians has already seen a huge shift. The pandemic has essentially accelerated the growth and popularity of the regions. Instead of flying off to Bali for a spiritual holiday, we discovered the spirit of our own country, and we fell in love with our very large backyard. And I think whenever restrictions permitted, I certainly did, loaded up the car or jumped on a plane and explored new parts of Australia away from the big cities. We're also seeing a lot of focus on the regions when it comes to Australian events. In September, which is unbelievably now, in a couple of weeks, Wollongong will host the UCI World Championships, which is one of the biggest cycling events on the international cycling calendar. Wollongong's going to see over 300 people visit over a 5-day period. And we're seeing homes going for crazy amounts. Everyone's all the locals are getting out for those 5 days and renting their homes. I said at the event last week, I saw a property, 4-bedroom property for $48,000 for 5 days. We're also, for anyone in Victoria, in 2026, we have the Commonwealth Games that we're hosting here. And this will be essentially across 4 regional hubs, including ACM's Bendigo and Ballarat communities. We'll also finally see the launch of Bonza. For those who haven't heard, Bonza is an airline which essentially is launching to connect regional Australians to one another. So it's region to region flight versus region to city. So these guys clearly see the huge opportunity that exists for travel in regional Australia. And regional Australia offers the good life. It has a unique lifestyle, a strong sense of community, and more affordability than the major capital cities. And Heartbeat found that those living in regional Australia are already sensing this shift in population, with 72% of them agreeing that more people are moving to their community. And they're not wrong. The narrative around regional migration is not new to anyone here on this call today. We hear about it a lot, but it continues to evolve and grow. The latest data, which just came out on Monday from the CBA's Movers Index, showed that net migration to the regions is 30% higher today than it was 2 years prior to the pandemic. A few call-outs here around where people are moving to. The Gold Coast has welcomed 11% of all capital city movers, Sunshine Coast 5%, whilst ACM communities of Wollongong and Lake Macquarie each attracted 2% of all city movers. And another call-out here, which I was shocked about, but Bathurst is a hugely rapidly growing inland hub. It's seen 39% growth in population since the pandemic. So, you know, lots of people are changing the way that they live and where they live. A recent McCrindle study also reported that 60% of Australians who don't currently already live in the regions have considered moving there. So we definitely should expect this trend to continue. And it's the younger generations that are driving the regional migration. I think the dream of owning a home in the main cities is becoming increasingly challenging for many, particularly younger generations. And these guys, they want a backyard and a detached house over apartment living. They're looking to access more space and a simpler lifestyle. They want to be close to beautiful landscapes and friendlier communities, which is especially true for those that are raising young families. And over half of Gen Z and millennials like the idea of moving away from the city, but maintaining or retaining a city job. And I think with the flexibility that companies now have to offer their employees, this lifestyle is easily achievable and not something that would have happened 2 years ago. These guys are called e-changers, which is a new term for me, but I think we need to get used to that because it's going to continue to grow. We've also seen a huge boom in regional property over the last couple of years, where property values have increased by 41%. The boom's been driven by many trends, but I'll call out 4 here. The first being sea and tree changes, where people were escaping lockdowns, often buying houses sight unseen, or maybe just fed up with extended restrictions and they're finally choosing to have another lifestyle, a different type of lifestyle. Secondly is rent vesting. And this is essentially first-time investors who are choosing to invest in regional property due to better value, higher rental yield and lower vacancy rates, whilst continuing to rent in the city suburb that they can't afford to actually buy a home in. So rent where you want to live and then invest elsewhere. 44% of Australians now favour residential homes and apartments over hotels when it comes to holidaying. So we're seeing a huge growth in the kind of Airbnb style market. And, you know, sadly, in some areas, it's taking a lot of property off the rental market for locals. So there's a big challenge that comes with that. But it's certainly something that we will continue to see growth in putting your rental or your investment properties up on the short-term market for holidaying. We've also seen, due to, I guess, the rise in domestic travel, this huge growth in the destination pub. I learned that, which I was quite shocked about, but half of all pubs sold in Australia at the moment are in regional markets, and regional pub sales have grown by 135% in the last 2 years. And when we look at the likes of the Merivale Group, who are literally snapping up properties all around the place and spending millions on their redevelopment, Lawn Pub being one down here in Victoria. We've also seen Matt Moran renovate the Rockley Pub, which is not too far from Bathurst. So there's a lot that's going on in the property space. And although in the last couple of weeks we've started to see a correction right across the country, but also in particular regional property, it's definitely something that's going to continue to be a compelling proposition for Australians. So even though regional Australia offers this brilliant opportunity, there is going to be pressure that will continue to increase on local services as the population grows and evolves and shifts in terms of its makeup and demographic. Regional residents already feel that they don't have the same level of access to essential services compared to those in the major capital cities. And those main areas of concerns are access to childcare, and it's not affordable childcare, it's just childcare full stop. Access to healthcare, so doctors and hospitals, etc. And we know the crisis that's happening in that space right now, right around the country. Access to quality internet and phone connectivity. There's been lots of challenge around NBN. Hopefully satellites will start to help people in the regions get better access, because a lot of them don't have it at the moment. But most worryingly is just 53% of those in the regions that feel they do not have access to affordable housing, which is a huge concern. And just deal a lot with the Regional Australia Institute, and later this month they're launching at a national summit a 10-year strategy that is going to have 5 key pillars to implement new strategies around regional Australia to ensure that this growth that we're experiencing actually benefits the regions rather than becoming a hindrance and a burden, which is kind of what it's feeling like at the minute, because they also found that 80% of Australians believe that there should be a more equal distribution of population amongst the regions and metro markets. So, you know, we need to get this right, because otherwise it is just going to put so much pressure on the regions, and there'll be a lot of Australians that really struggle. But what comes with that is a huge opportunity. And I think jobs and skills is one of the key pillars. And when you look at the latest stats, I think last month there was 87,000 positions vacant in regional markets, which is the highest they have ever had. So there's a real shortage, and they need more skilled workers in the regions, which of course the government has got many incentives around to grow that. So we touched on how those in the regions feel less seen and supported than those in the capital cities. So it was really interesting for me to learn that they appear to make a lot more effort and place more value on building connections within their community and supporting one another. Heartbeat found that those with a strong sense of community are 30 to 40% more likely to be satisfied with their lives, and this is absolutely true in the regions. There's this real sense of pride for those living outside the major cities. They talk more positively about their community, and they share a strong community spirit, which helps make the regions a really special place. We tested a load of statements, but those in the regions tested far more positive. A few examples of those were, I feel like my community is a great place to live. I would recommend my community to others, and I believe that we help each other in times of challenging times. And as I said, metro versus regional, the regions felt far more strongly about 6 different statements that we tested. So we know the community is important to people in the regions, but what does it actually mean to feel connected to a community? We learned that actions speak louder than words. People in the regions are getting more involved in their community to help them feel a sense of connection to the people and the place that they live. So some of the things that they mentioned was they are shopping locally and supporting local businesses. They're not just doing that, they are doing it to feel connected to their community. That's the key thing in these statements. They communicate with people from their community. They attend local events and activities to feel connected. Local sport and local clubs is a really big thing in the regions, and also volunteering. For example, 24% of those in the regions volunteer to feel a connection to community versus only 10% in metro markets. So once again, massively over-indexing when it comes to how they get involved in their community to feel a stronger sense of belonging. So why now onto news, which of course is kind of our core proposition. So we found that why the regions access local news seems to be more important than how they access news. Heartbeat highlighted that those in the regions are consciously consuming local news. And by this we mean they're actively seeking it out and consuming it to meet certain needs. So firstly, people in the regions access news to understand things that might affect them. They feel a sense of duty as a citizen to stay informed, and consuming local news is habitual and something that they do every day. They like to talk about it with friends and other people in the community, and so it's quite a shareable social currency. So local news plays a really functional role in their lives, but it also plays a more humanistic role. So consuming local news and stories helps create a sense of belonging to the community, its people, and is a way to show support for local businesses. When an audience actively seeks out and consciously consumes content, we can only assume that that environment demands higher attention and engagement, which are really important metrics for all of us here that are in the media and advertising industry. We were very happy to get this learning, but the most important thing that helps regional audiences feel connected to their community is consuming local news and stories and knowing what's going on in their local area. And this is far more important in the regions than the 5 big capital cities. And at ACM, we produce over 7,000 localised pieces of content every single week, probably more actually. That was sort of a bit of a safe summary that our key editor gave us, that it really ensures that our readers can access quality and relevant information to where they live. And our mastheads play a really important role in promoting a sense of belonging to the many communities we serve right around the country. And in fact, 81% of our readers feel connected to their community versus 60% of those non-readers. We also uncovered that our readers believe that investing in their local news masthead, be that through a digital subscription or actually going and buying a paper from a news agency, it's a way to indirectly support their broader community, because they know that if they pay for local news, it will help ensure that it continues to exist. And we've seen all too many closures over the last few years, and sadly we have had to close some too, but they are publications that are free, and with increasing costs it just doesn't become viable any longer. So, you know, being able to pay for your local news does help ensure that it will continue to exist, but that also comes down to people advertising in the channels. ACM's seen a 56% year-on-year increase in our digital subscriptions, which just shows the value that our readers have with our trusted mastheads, and we will continue to grow that. And it's a big strategy and KPI of our editorial team for the next, you know, 5 years ahead. We learned that trust and high quality reputable journalism are the 2 most important factors when it comes to news. Interestingly, I found that those in the regions put way more value on reputable journalism, which is interesting. But it's not surprising then that Australians, and this isn't just regional, this is right across the board, all Australians rank regional/local news mastheads as the most trusted source. And it's also the main source of local news in the regions. 39% of them, their main source is local mastheads through digital platforms, and 19% of them, which was second, their main source is through newspapers, followed by TV and radio, but we've got all that detail in the report, which we can share with you. So now we will explore advertising to the regions, which is important for all of us here on this call. So those in the regions have specifically called out that they want to see national brands advertising in their local newspapers. They see it as an equivalent of investing in the community that they're so passionate about. Yet the majority are not seeing national brands in their local mastheads, which is not surprising. I did a SMI report recently and was horrified to learn this, but I wanted to share it because I think it's really important. But regional newspapers, regional mastheads, only receive 0.5% of an annual advertising investment of $8.5 billion, which is kind of extraordinary when you think about it. And does it get the most eyeballs? No, perhaps not. But is it an important channel in the regions? Absolutely, yes. So it feels like a hugely disproportionate spend on a media channel that plays such an important role in helping regional communities feel connected. People feel that national brands place value on customers from the city more so than those in the regions, and interestingly and scarily so, I think, those people in metro markets actually felt this as strongly as those in the regions. So people in metro also feel that their kind of brands value them more than consumers in the regions, which is kind of crazy. And we found that it's the younger generations living in the regions who are feeling this far more strongly, which is a bit of a concern when you look at what's driving the growth of the regions. It's this younger cohort of people that are shifting and evolving the demographics of regional, and these guys are expecting the same experiences and the same brands and access to the same stuff as those in metro markets. So it's something that we as advertisers need to consider about how we get our brands to them. And we know that our readers are going to be consuming more, doing more, and making big purchase decisions in the next 12 months. We've got all the detail that sits behind this, but absolutely we offer a lucrative audience to reach and influence over the next 18 months. NAB's most recent customer spending data shows that spending is growing faster in regional areas than in the major Australian cities, and in fact reported on 15 LGAs outside the big cities that posted growth of more than 10% in the past quarter, which is huge. And this aligns to that earlier point I made around people that are happier, i.e. those in the regions that are happier and more satisfied with their lives are consuming and doing more. So we also found that Australians want brands to do good in the world, and there's a lot of Aussie companies that are doing great things. And I think after the many social disruptions of the pandemic, a lot more companies are recognising, yes, we do the equality and diversity and inclusion, etc., but a lot more of them are now recognising that social responsibility also needs to extend to Australian communities and, of course, the environment, which is something that our readers really care about. 70% of our readers value brands that support their community, so they want to hear about how brands are doing that. ACM partners with over 200 different community programs right across all the regions that we serve, and it includes everything from kind of small business initiatives, environmental programs. We have partnerships with both grassroots sports but also major sporting teams like the Newcastle Knights. We do cultural events such as Canberra Writers Festival or the Tamworth Country Music Festival, so there's a lot of opportunities for brands to access the local partnerships that we have, and things that are really important to the communities that we serve. So that's something to consider, and maybe something you wouldn't have known that ACM did, but we can certainly help connect you to important initiatives. And talking about big issues, our readers are far more concerned about more things affecting their communities and society than those in the capital cities. We tested 11 different issues. There's only some of them on this page here, but our readers over-indexed against 10 of the 11. And interestingly, the only thing where metro audiences over-indexed on an issue was for a growing migrant population. So those in the city are more concerned about that. But on the flip side, the regions are concerned, including our readers, are more concerned about all of these issues impacting our country. We have over 600 journalists right around the country that live in the communities that they write for, and they are constantly shining a light on important issues that impact the communities we serve, be them big issues or small issues. They're influencing government and local councils, and they hold them accountable to ensure that communities get the changes and the funding and the support that they need, especially at times of crisis, which sadly happens far too often in the regions. And I think it's, this is a bit of a bugbear of mine, is that we often see big brands, talking about how they support the regions or their, in terms of the Lismore with the flooding, but we see the ads running in metro publications. And that's certainly, we've seen that quite a few times with some really big national brands. If you want to drive credibility and trust with the regions, then show up in their local mastheads. It's so important. To literally be advertising in metro publications and talking about how you support the regions is kind of bonkers. So it's just something to consider when you're planning and wanting to engage with the regions. Our readers really like to read about local businesses and initiatives. They want to see advertising that's localised to where they live, and they want to hear how brands and businesses are supporting communities. So we are very fortunate to have Story Central. Some of you may have leveraged it before, but it's our commercial content studio with a dedicated team of journalists that create content for brands, essentially. So leveraging ACM's trusted voice can help advertisers connect in a far more meaningful way with the regions. And our team of journalists will help craft a brand story, be that through hyperlocal kind of stories that are literally at a sort of a postcode, a new store opening, for example, or doing a big national content series. But it's about lending our journalistic qualities, turning a brand story into a local voice, and then leveraging our trusted environment. So it's a huge opportunity for brands to leverage that. And actually we have some of the girls sitting here in Melbourne. ACM's core proposition is to be the trusted voice to the communities we serve. And we saw earlier that our readers trust ACM mastheads. And in fact, Our readers trust ACM mastheads 20% more than other Australians trust their main news source. So our journalists have earned the trust of our readers over decades of diligent work, ensuring that content is really carefully edited and curated to provide a safe environment for both our readers, but also for our advertisers. And given that our journalists live in the same place that they are writing stories for, it's super important that they do that, because they will literally get accosted at the local supermarket or on the high street if they've said something incorrect or wrong. So it's incredibly important for us to ensure that we have that trust and that quality, journalistic qualities. So just to capture the key outtakes for agencies and brands, advertising in local mastheads is an investment in their community. So by showing up, you are showing that you care about the regions and where they live. ACM mastheads enable brands to connect with audiences in an environment that facilitates connection. As we've seen, there's many proof points here that shows the connection between local news and community connection. People in the regions are very active in their community, so leveraging grassroots activation is a really great way to show up, and we can help you do that. Our readers are highly engaged with our mastheads, and brands can stand out in that environment which demands high attention, which is incredibly important. And at a time of distrust and misinformation, you can leverage ACM's trust credentials, which we work very hard to uphold. And Story Central is there to share your brand story with the local voice. So just the key themes that came out, these were sort of more the insights that that fell out the back of the heartbeat research, is that the regions will continue to evolve and grow. The regions place a lot of value, a lot more value, on feeling connected to their community. The regions seek out and consciously consume local news, and we know that it helps them feel connected to the place that they live and the people that live there. And the regions want brands to show up in their community, but they're not necessarily seeing it. So I invite all of you to continue to evolve your perception and our industry's narrative around regional Australia, but also just to consider the opportunity for brands that you work with to leverage ACM and our trusted mastheads that help regional communities stay strong, informed and connected. So the last point is that consuming local news essentially helps with a deeper community connection. It gives a sense of community well-being and higher life satisfaction, and also it leads to being more active in terms of purchasing and doing things and making big decisions. So I thank you for your time. There was a lot that I covered really quickly, but we'll certainly, Sam, I think, is going to look at sharing the research with you, and also happy to share this presentation if you think it would be helpful. But thanks so much for joining today. I really enjoyed presenting that. Thank you.